can kind of get to know a little bit about what we're doing here, what we've been putting together here. So Camille, come on down, and you see, Camille Zamora is the co-founder of Sing for Homers, and also a soprano and a performer. You can see her on stage. Lucy Yank is our orchestra, and Lucy is an incredible pianist that really is the orchestra. She is the one that provides the entire score for the show, and has performed all over the world, and came from performing at Lincoln Center to do this, and we're just so very thrilled. And so this is just a chance for you to kind of get an inside look to the arts and what types of careers that there are in the arts to do. It's always good to do your fact getting at your age, even starting in middle school, because who knows, you might decide you want to be an artist one day, or you might decide you want to be a conductor, or you might decide you want to be the makeup artist. And so I leave it to the two of you to discuss a little bit about the opera and different careers in the arts and their paths.
Amazing! Hi, everyone!
Hi.
I'm so excited to see you, or as we say in French, bonjour!
Bonjour.
Love it! So yeah, can you imagine, I have known Miss P since we were your age. Since we were 13, I've known Miss P. And she was always the same amazing person that she is now. She was always just putting together fun things and so creative and so alive, and it's such a treat to be here with her and my colleagues Chris and Bridget and Patrick and David and Jen was around here somewhere and Marley, and of course I've been with Amelie this full time. Am I forgetting any other single colleagues? Our wonderful team. It's just a treat to be with you all. And another beautiful thing about this whole experience for me is I haven't gotten to work with my friend in 30 years. We're scrappy little sopranos. We work in New York City, and we're trying to figure it out. I was living in an apartment with a bunch of sopranos. You can imagine how much our neighbors loved us. They screamed, "Go! Anyway, we're back. So Lucy and I go way back, and it's such a treat. Lucy is now an august big figure in the music world. She conducts and she casts operas and she creates additions. And she has been a key force in bringing this piece together. So what is this piece? We like to say it's an eco-feminist fairy tale. What on earth does that mean? Okay, so first of all, when I say eco, what does that call up for you? Any words? Yes, sir.
Ecological.
Thank you. Ecological, which means...
What is ecological?
Amazing. That's exactly right. So it's about all this stuff. Beauty of nature. So we like to say this is an eco-feminist fairy tale. So feminist, meaning gender equality, meaning it's not necessarily about, especially a couple hundred years ago, it's not necessarily about the king being solely in charge of everybody else. It's about an open dialogue. And that's what's cool about this opera. You're going to see it's not just about the young daughter, princess, going to go marry the person who her dad says just because he's a king. It's about her having her own voice. And that's why we like to say it's eco, because it's about nature, feminist, because it's about gender equality, gender equity. And it's about what the world can be. And so for us to have this opportunity to share this music in a world that you all have created through your artwork. Unbelievable. So we've been hard at work. We have gone from like 0 to 60. We brought this from basically a group of people who didn't really know each other much. A couple of us know each other, but we're meeting actually for the first time. We put everybody in a personal room a couple of days ago. We've been working in various offices in this room all week. And Miss P has put us through our paces, and I think we're going to have something pretty fun. Now, part of the joy of live theater is that stuff can change on a dime, right? Can anybody share an experience of something kind of wacky and unexpected that's happened in a performance? Has anyone ever had something, even it can be as simple as like, you forget a word. Yes, Marley.
Not too long ago, we had to change how we do a choreo based on spacing. Like for example, today, Lena let me and Jaheim know that we had to change what we were supposed to do in a choreo because of how close we were to her, so we couldn't do that particular piece.
Yeah, I love that. So there's a real life lesson. I do think this is why, you're going to see in later life smart heads of companies, and I'm not even talking about the arts. Steve Jobs, who created Apple, iPhones and iMacs and all that, he always talked about how he loved to hire artists. Why? Because artists know how to improvise. We know how to change. We know how to be flexible. And this whole show has been about being flexible, including this morning at 6 a.m. Got a message from our pal Titus, and he is sick to his stomach. So unfortunately, he is not able to come. But luckily, we have awesome Justin. Justin, there we are. There we are. Woo! That's standing out. So the true nature of the theater, you just make it work. You get up there and it's better than what you could have expected. So that's sort of the magic of the theater. So those are some of my thoughts. I'd like to hand it now to my friend Lucy to share anything about yourself or the piece or this experience, and then we'll take a couple of questions.
I actually like to know. There's so much I want to know from you all. Like from Justin, our fantastic narrator. I'd love to know how you prepared the art and what might you have had to change at the last minute.
Oh, oh. So during like I think for whole classes sometimes Amelie used to pull me out and then we went over like some of the reading parts.
Yep.
During some of the classes and how to like visibly act them out sometimes, like showing expression at some part, taking pauses after the period and all that stuff. And also I was supposed to be doing something with Titus, who was originally the narrator, like how Miss Camille said. But since he backed out, I had to start in for the narrator since I was originally the understudy.
Yes, you were playing you had prepared the narrator's part, but you were prepared to play a completely different part. That's why theater. Switch parts and bring that wonderful narration to life. And I think even some of the narration changed in the lesson.
Oh,
And
definitely.
there were words that changed, and you just absorbed it right in. It's fabulous.
Our great pal Damien Wetzel, who's on our board, he's a dancer and he's president of Juilliard, that awesome school. He always talks about artistic habits of mind. Meaning that, you train as an artist, you get these habits of being flexible, of working with people, of being under intense, high stress situations and still being kind and still being calm. How about that? Those are some art superpowers. So
I would say the superpower I have to exercise in this piece is knowing because I'm the pianist and music director. So I'm the one who has to listen to everybody. And if there are notes to be given, somebody wants to roll their R a little more, or something's a little bit out of tune, I'm the one who's supposed to speak up and say something. So I would say the superpower that I really need this afternoon, and you can tell me afterwards if you think I did okay, is knowing when to follow and when to lead. That's really a big part of leadership is knowing when the singers are just going to take the melody away and I just follow and play underneath. And when they need a little help getting to where they're going, and I need to maybe play a little faster, or I need to play a little louder because it's hard to hear from the other side of the stage. So those are the kinds of things that I need to adjust in the moment. And then there's another moment where I have to make up some music.
yeah,
There's a little narration, and I'm going from one piece. I'll show you what it is. I'm going, and you can see what happens in the moment. There's somebody's playing something beautiful. Great. There's a wedding march because should I spoil the plot? I won't spoil it. It's a march. And then the music changes. This is the note B, and B is about to change keys for us, but there's a little narration that happens, and I have to make up some music, and I have no idea what it's going to sound like right now. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to end in B. You'll know it when you hear it. You'll know it when the fairies start singing it. But yeah, I have to just respond to what I'm hearing and make up something that I think will sound good. It will sound like the rest of the music. It can't be like I don't want to make up something random. I have to make it up so that it sounds right with the rest of the music. But those are some of the things that I'm going to do. The other question I have for you guys is you are designers. Didn't you guys design these amazing? Okay, I get so distracted because I'm trying to play the piano. And then I'm seeing the projections and I just want to look at these beautiful pictures that you made and they're all like they're collages, right? Wasn't a lot of it collage? It's so fabulous. I want to just stop playing and watch the projections go up. So how did you all learn the story and decide how to create it? Tell me.
So, in necessarily our teacher, he was explaining the upper and house, the goals of change, and
Yes.
the forces, the huts, the
Yes.
like the weather and stuff, and he used different fabrics with different patterns. Yeah.
It's fabric.
Yes.
Yeah.
We use fabric, we use paint, we use like a lot of things in order for us to have a lot of detail. But even though just the still a lot.
There's so much texture to it.
Yes.
It's beautiful. How big are the pictures? Because of course I've seen the
this, Stella's painting on stage.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the ones that they made. Yeah, they're all that size.
Okay. Okay, so like this.
More like
Like 11 by 7.
Did you work together or did each person do their own? Divided into two groups so you can do it fast.
we're kind of divided into four beds, I should say that. Because there's two and two, right? So one is doing abs part.
Oh, in the same picture. You would pick parts of the same picture. Yeah.
Like they can set it like there's the one side.
Right.
And the other side.
Was that hard to work with two people on the same piece? Not hard. Cool. So you guys are good collaborators. Yeah. Anything else you want to tell me as an audience member about how you created this world? Yes. Did your imagination, did it change as you learned more about the story? Yeah. Did you guys hear the narration that Justin learned? You didn't have that stuff in your head, okay. You had different stuff in your head. Yeah. Those are so brilliant. You should be so thrilled. I mean, everybody is gonna love this series so much. We are so proud to be working with you on this. It's an amazing thing.
Can I ask them a question?
Of course.
For you? Guys, can I get a show of hands of who's been taking piano lessons? So Miss Lucy, who plays piano, can see. Who's been taking piano lessons? Yeah. Justin. Yeah, Justin, raise your hand.
Yay! Who plays any instrument? Who plays any instrument? Even sort of. Even sort of. Yeah. What instruments do you guys play? Shout it out. Yes.
I can play the
I feel like that's part of the piano. That's great. Ukulele. You play piano.
I've been playing piano ever since I was like born. Even though I wasn't like professional, I was just smashing the.
There we go. See, that's my vibe. I love that. My feeling is everybody's an artist. Everybody's a pianist. And you know, smashing can sound like thunder. You know, I mean,
Yes.
it's cool when someone is practiced, but it's also cool when someone just goes for it. So, y'all, this is amazing. We have time for one more question from Ms. Lucy, and then we're gonna go get ready for our meeting.
Go get ready. And you need to get ready. They have a performance.
You all.
You guys are
stars. You're our stars.
That's my question. No, ask me a question.
Yes, any questions? One last question from Ms. Lucy, and we're excited to know that y'all are getting ready to entertain everybody out there. Can I see a hand? Does anybody have a last question for Ms. Lucy? Yes, ma'am. I saw a little hand starting to go up.
Liana.
Leona, go ahead.
We'd love to hear.
When did you start playing instruments /
They found me when I was 3 in the church, in the fellowship hall of the church, doing this. I don't know if it was that or Lucy. I was playing something that I had heard in church, and they found me down in the basement of the church going boom, 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 boom. And my parents were like, and my parents are not musicians. And so they were like, we better get her some lessons. And so when I was 5, I got a little piano and I started taking classes.
Amazing.
And I was The great thing is the piano can take it. The piano can take it's a big strong machine, and it can take, like, we want to treat it well, but it can take most of what I'm going to throw a lot at it. I'm going to throw a lot at it this afternoon. All the pianos at Bard are really great.
The pianos are smiling inside them. Well, we thank you all so much. We love you. You're our inspiration. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for making the trip today. And, Lucy has one last question. Singing.
What else are you doing?
Anybody want to?
Come on.
and some dancing.
Amazing. This is going to be the best part of the day.
I know.
Okay, wait.
Awesome.
Thank you. Break the leg.
Let's give them a hand.
Have a great show.
I just have one note, and then I am going to go and get ready so that I can be there for your performance. I'm so excited. So, I'm going to take all of you on stage to bow at the end of the opera. What do you think? Yeah? So, I don't know where you're sitting, but I'm going to have Miss Bridget Sneaky text me. I will be somewhere in the house standing or pacing or whatever.
Okay.
And maybe just let me know where you guys are.
Yep.
And then, would my gentleman be on the end of the row? I'm going to go. You choose.
Yeah. No, you asked Jaden.
I haven't asked him.
Jaden.
This is me. Jaden, because Miss Lee has questionable eyesight sometimes. If you're on the end and I come down to get the group, if I could take your hand when we go up the steps, okay?
Yes.
If you just kind of escort me, that would be great. And then you guys are pro bowers. This I know. So the singers, they're going to ask us to come up on stage. I will come down, magically appear wherever you are, and we will go up on stage and make one line and do our bow. Okay? Just do our bow like we always do it, yeah? Does that make sense? Do we need to rehearse? I don't think so.
No, we'll be okay.
We got this. Okay? So just be ready for that. And yeah, I can't wait to see you in a couple of Hi, my name is Sharon Pirtle. I am the Director of Education for Sing for Hope and also the Director of Le Dernier Sorcier, or The Last Sorcerer by Pauline Biardot, that was performed on August 11th, 2024 at the Bard Summer Music Festival.
Hi, my name is Emily Kaufman, and I am a rising sophomore at the University of Denver. I am an alum of Sing for Hope, and I was the assistant director for Le Dernier Sorcier, performed at the Bard Summer Music Festival.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about directing and production, how to put on a production of an opera. So let's start with what is Le Dernier Sorcier, or The Last Sorcerer. It was an opera that has been lost for about 150 years, that was recently discovered. It's by Pauline Biardot. And it's basically like a wonderful fairy tale. It's a very simple story about a sorcerer who's old and losing his powers, but he has placed himself in the middle of a forest and built a garish castle and just been really not a very nice neighbor to the fairies, who that was their home. And for years, he has taunted them, and they have been trying everything in their power to make him leave the forest so that the forest can be restored to its natural state. So even though this opera is 150 years old, it's about conservation and protecting our forests, and also speaking up when you think something isn't right. So we felt it was really important to bring it back, and we involved our students at the Sing for Hope Lab in New York to help us create this opera through a camp that we did this summer, in which they were the scenic designers. And so let's talk a little bit about what it took to create the opera and all of what was involved in what we call pre-production. So pre the show going up on August 11th, what are all the things that we have to do? Well, myself as the director, I have to lead and guide all of the elements, and that means the set design, the lighting design, the costume design, and any choreography that may happen. I have to kind of meet with this team of folks called the creative team prior to the opera and bring together a vision so that we're all on the same page with what we're going to create. And of course, if I didn't have all of those elements at my fingertips, well, then the opera would be very boring, because I know how to direct, but I certainly love to have a lighting designer next to me helping to realize the vision through the light and the colors that will be shown in the opera. What about you? Tell us a little bit about your role in this pre-production process.
Pre-production for the assistant director is really about doing whatever the director needs. So for me, that meant putting together a scene breakdown with all of the characters and what scenes they were in, even including where they were, so that our set designers could know the settings. On top of that, also creating what is called a show Bible, which takes a mini, which is basically a small blueprint for what the stage is going to look like, printing out 160 of those for 160 pages of opera. And then on the other side of that page, because it's single-sided, 160, printing all of the opera on the other side, so that as you're flipping through my show Bible, you can see that on those pages I have drawn where the actors are and where they're going with arrows and things like that.
Yeah, so the assistant director is really my brain, and it's so important. And I was an assistant director for a long time as I was learning how to direct, and it's really great because, first of all, your scene breakdown is extremely helpful in that you find yourself needing to create a schedule for your actors. And so the scene breakdown shows you who's in each scene. Quickly, you can just look at it. It's a chart. And you can then think through, well, how long is it going to take me to direct this scene with my actors, and who do I need there and for how long? So that's very, very important when you are planning your process. The rehearsal process is very, very important because you don't have a lot of time. You have to really measure time and use it wisely. You don't want to waste anybody's time. So that is very important. The show Bible, or the score with the script, is very important because the assistant director takes down every single note and cue for the opera, so that by the end you have a book that will show you everything you need to redo the opera somewhere else. So some other company might want to do the opera, or I might be asked in 3 years to go direct it somewhere else, I can take that book and remember everything that I did. Not to say that I would do it exactly the same way, because every cast is different, and as a director you really have to understand and know that, because you're going to go in and something that worked for one actor is not going to work for the other. They're motivated by different things, but it does give you a framework from which to go by, which is very, very important. So she took down every single note, every single cue, and let's talk a little bit about cues. What are cues?
Each cue is basically composed of everything that you need to make the atmosphere of the opera or the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So that means your projections, your lighting, your sound, if you have it, now even smell, in shows like Waitress. But basically taking all of those things, putting them together, and putting them into this one thing called a cue, so that when the stage manager is backstage, they can say, cue 15, and everybody knows, including the lighting designer and the projections person, that when you say cue 15 means that you're going to a sunset over a lake. And the lights will turn into a sunset over the lake with reds and oranges and purples and blues, and the projections will show that as well.
Right, and each one is timed. So, and when you're doing opera or musical theater, that's really important, because you're often timing it with music. In a straight play, you would be timing it to the words, because all of that flow is what's creating your art, and that is what you as a director, along with your lighting designer, are really trying to come together to do when you go into the theater. Let's talk about rehearsals. So when do the performers get involved on a show?
The performers are sort of one of the last things to come in. So you could be working for 6 months to get something ready, but only have 3 weeks with the performers, or in our case, 1 week with the performers. And so they will come in, and you bring them in at the very end of the process when you have their costumes picked out, all of the projections put together. You don't necessarily have the cues or the lighting yet, but you have everything else that they need to be ready to come in and to be put into this world that you've been creating for them.
Yeah, and so actually, when you're talking about a professional performer, they've done their homework before they set foot into rehearsal. They usually know their part, they're what's called off book. That's what it's all about when you're a performer, is that you, certain things are expected of you to do on your own before you arrive, so that you can jump in with the director and the music director or conductor and do the refinement and stage the show. So you're starting at a different level coming in, both musically and acting wise, so that you can explore the character and explore the music even more. Let's talk a little bit about one of the concepts of this opera was to create things using students, creating scenic elements using students, and so that they could be a part of the experience, and also using recycled materials. So why don't you explain that in terms of the costumes, and why do we do that?
So for the costumes, to begin on sort of the first level of costumes, I put together what's called a lookbook. And when you're putting together a lookbook, it's pretty much figuring out the vibe of the opera. And you'll start out by doing that by working with your director and figuring out when you want it to be set, where you want it to be set, because those things can kind of fluctuate with how the director wants to play them. So figuring that out first, and then putting together sort of the atmosphere, so then you can put together what you want the performers to be wearing. So my first thing was that I took pictures off of the internet to put together a slide of what the force looks like when the main character, the sorcerer, has destroyed it, and then what it looks like once it has been restored. From there, you can put together a lookbook, which is combining what the actors look like, the performers look like, which is really important to see body type and skin tone and what colors are going to work for them and what colors are going to represent them and their characters. And then what people or characters remind you of them. So one of the characters is a lazy former giant. So in my lookbook, I pulled a picture of a giant laying down, sleeping, things like that. And then pulling pictures of costume pieces that you think are integral to the story or to the character. One of my favorites was the robe that Kakamish wears. Kakamish is the sorcerer. And he loved, the performer wearing the robe loved the robe, and I loved the robe because it was exactly what I felt I was looking for. It was this 18th century dressing gown that men wore, but it looked run down so that it could represent somebody who had fallen from power. Then from there, because we were using recycled materials, even though you can look at a video or you can look at a picture, you can look at the opera on stage and the costumes can look gorgeous. Because we're using recycled materials and recycled costumes, we went into the Bard warehouse where they have costumes from other operas that they've done before. So instead of building them from the ground up, which is somewhat easier sometimes, we chose to go through all of those costumes, hundreds upon hundreds of costumes in this one warehouse, and find things that perfectly fit the vision that we had. And they were perfect because they look beautiful on stage, but they also represent the fact that they were recycled and they had been used. We could even see tags in these costumes that were tags from other operas that had been put on.
And as for the set, we really wanted to involve the students, right? So we had about 20 middle school students, and they spent 2 weeks studying the opera and creating paintings and drawings and cutouts using fabric and paint and hot glue, all of these things to create the set. Now, you're probably going to ask, well, what do you mean create the set by drawing a picture? Well, a lot of times theaters have really strong projectors nowadays, and so we were able to take their drawings and make them lifelike. And what that meant was taking their artwork, scanning it, and then projecting it on the back wall of the theater so that suddenly their paintings were, 10 feet, 12 feet tall, and filled up the entire back wall. And that was really, really exciting to see. They made choices in their study of the opera and setting that actually informed the acting choices of the singers. And that was really, really exciting to see that symbiotic relationship and to see the students getting to participate in such a way to where they really felt the ownership once they sat down and got to view the opera and see their artwork up there on the stage. Let's talk a little bit about the tech process, because it's kind of a gnarly process, and theater people are always saying tech, 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 tech. What is tech?
Tech is, like I described before when I talked about what a cue is, tech is all of the technical pieces of the opera coming together on a day, hours, 2 days, however much time you have to be put into the score and be timed throughout the opera. So that means figuring out if a blackout is going to take 20 seconds or 5 seconds or be immediate. And that's really important because there are people calling the cues backstage, that's the stage manager, but there are also people who are listening to the stage manager and they press the button when that cue needs to go. And so it's really important to have the tech process, because the tech process means that your stage manager and everybody who is behind the scenes are coming together. They know that Q17 means Q17, and Q17 maybe is a lake with a sunset and something like that. And you're making sure that the stage manager doesn't think that Q17 is actually a forest, but everybody else thinks that it's a lake. Because if that happens, then that symbiosis that we were talking about before doesn't happen. And so what the tech process is all about is coming in, making sure that the lights look good on the performers, but also making sure that everybody knows what's going on at a given time.
Right, because like air traffic control, theater is a bit like an airport and planes taking off, and the air traffic controller, our stage manager, is the person calling all the cues so that the airplanes don't crash into each other. Theater is very much a timed art, and everything fitting together just right, the lighting, the costumes, the actors coming on at the right time, the projections being called at the same time, video being called if there's video, all of that has to be timed just right. And that's the director's job, is to manage that, one, in the rehearsal room with the singers, and then take all of that knowledge into the theater and distribute it among the lighting designer and the projection designer and everyone that's in the theater before you bring the singers and actors back in to put it all together. When it works is when you've seen a great piece of theater and you feel like you've just sat down and the story was, you were on the edge of your seat and the story was 10 minutes when really it was an hour and a half. When it doesn't quite work and transitions are slow or rocky or not happening smoothly or effectively, that's when the storytelling gets compromised and things kind of start to fall apart and your audience falls asleep. So it's a big job, and it's always on a time limit. You always want more time in the theater than you actually have. And why is there always limited time in the theater? That's because running a theater is very expensive. It requires at least 100 people, possibly, that are working the various things in that space to make it happen. And so you don't just linger around. You need to make sure that you're using everybody's time wisely and effectively. Let's talk a little bit about what it's like to be a performer versus what it's like to be a director, assistant director, production person, because we were both performers. Can you tell me your experience about the differences between the two?
When you're a performer, you are very focused on getting on stage, doing what you're supposed to do, doing your blocking, remembering your lines, remembering your music, all of those things. When you're a director, you're very focused on more of the big picture. So making sure that the lighting's going okay and the projections are going okay and everything's kind of coming together, especially on the day of the performance. The day of the performance is the day that you need to be the most worried about it, but also is the day where you get to relax once the show is going on. So that's really a big difference. A lot of performers also don't understand the role of a director and can sort of take them for granted sometimes, and also the role of any tech position. But what's really important as a performer to know is that your director and everybody who's working on tech is working so hard behind the scenes, and you're not seeing a lot of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all really good points. What I would say is, somebody asked me long ago, like, when did you decide that you wanted to be a director and not necessarily a performer, that you wanted to transition into that role? Well, I think one of the big clues for me was when I was in conservatory, and I had lots of energy, and I would tend to go and run 5 miles before my auditions, before my voice lessons. a lot of times maybe at the wrong time because I'd be rushing into my lesson or rushing into my master class or whatever it was. And my teacher said to me, well, why are you doing that? You need to be more focused. You need to focus your energy and not be all over the place. Well, then I discovered directing. And that was when the aha moment, the light bulb went off, because performing is very much like a racehorse with blinders on. You have to keep your blinders on and keep your eye on the prize, an eye on the ball. And you have to do whatever it is, whether it's dance, singing, acting, all three. You have to do it at the very highest level to do it as a professional, right? And you have to really stick to that at all costs. As a director, those blinders come off, and you have to really have a lot of energy and be kind of all over the place. You can't not be focused, but you have to pay attention and multitask on everything going around you, manage it and lead it. And that just was a good fit for me. I found it really exciting. It met my energy level, and that's why I became a director. So, did you like this process of assistant directing? Do you think you'd want to be a theater director one day?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. She told me she wanted to go to law school, but...
It's in the arts, girl.
But you know what? No matter what, directing a theatrical production or assistant directing is great experience for any field you want to go into. And we hope you enjoy this little segment with Sharon Pirtle and Amelie Kaufman discussing the roles of the director and the assistant director and all of the pre-production that goes into putting on an opera. Thank you, and we thank the Paul Foundation for this series of Careers in the Arts. This is Sharon Pirtle, Director of Education for Sing for Hope, and Amelie Kaufman signing off. Bye!